Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Gut Rules Masterclass. Tonight's topic is Hidden Worlds Within. I'm very excited. There are things that Russell's going to discuss tonight that I actually think I've never heard him discuss. So I'm genuinely interested. Um, Again, thank you all for spending some time with us this evening. I'm just going to go over a few of kind of housekeeping items. So again, first of all, welcome. We do love sharing this time with you, and it's always even more fun the more interactive it is. So at any point in time, if you want to put a question into the chat, you're welcome to do that to the whole group. You can also send it to me privately if you'd like the question to be private. That is totally up to you. We will try to get to all of them. We do apologize if we don't get to all of them. Oftentimes there are too many to get to, but we promise that we do keep track of them. And even if it's offline or afterwards, we will certainly reach out and do our best to connect with you directly. So, one of the important points here is that tonight is really educational. It is an opportunity to learn and grow together. And we do offer the things that Russell is going to share tonight. They are for educational purposes. Russell is not here doing any kind of diagnosing or anything of that nature. So, this is for educational purposes. And again, we have more and more fun, the more interactive it is. So feel free to ask questions directly to myself or to the whole group. Without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Russell in just a moment. Russell Mariani is my dad. My mom, Megan Moore, is here. She is off camera, having some technical difficulties with her laptop, but she is here and she is full of spirit, I can assure you. My mom and dad and Russell will be running the show here this evening. They are the founders of the Center for Functional Nutrition. My dad has been doing this professionally, providing these types of educational formats and working directly with clients to dramatically improve their lives for about 45 years. He's almost at the 50-year mark, which is crazy because I don't know if everyone can see him. He still looks pretty young. Um, but he loves what he does, and it comes from a place of a real, like, really personal to him because he was once in a very difficult situation as a young man where he was struggling with some very, very serious health issues and gut issues in particular. And he set out on an educational journey of his own that ultimately had him cure everything that was going wrong. And he found some amazing teachers that gave him insights and teachings and principles that have shaped his own approach to health and well-being. And he's going to share a lot of that with you tonight. So, again, welcome everyone. I'll be putting some things in the chat as well as we go throughout tonight. And without further ado, Russell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me okay? Okay. And yes, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to be with us here live on the Gut Rules Masterclass. And a special welcome to those people who will be tuning into the recording of tonight's session on our YouTube channel. So it is Fat Tuesday. It is Mardi Gras Day for those of you who observe the Christian calendar. And Mardi Gras means literally Fat Tuesday. And it was the last day to party or celebrate before the 40-day observation of Lent, in which a lot of people fasted some of the time, some people all of the time. And I always like to remind people that it was a practical um, use of this period of time. We tend to think of the fasting and certain observances being spiritual disciplines, and of course, for some people it was, but it was also a very practical reality that by this time of year, for people living in the Middle East and people living in Europe, they were running out of food. They were running out of the food they had stored, grew in the summer and fall, and stored up in the form of pickles and root vegetables and things like that. So I always think it's important to remember that it wasn't just for spiritual purposes, but for physical purposes. People were literally running out of food, and so it made sense to limit the amount of food that you consumed during that last stretch of time before you could start growing food again in the spring. Also, I wanted to, on behalf of people who may be seeing me for the very first time or hearing this approach to health and healing and nutrition for the very first time, to simply do an overview, a brief overview, and then explain what the microbiome is, and then talk about this amazing study that literally just came out. It was published on February 9th, 2026. Okay, so um, I think of this health model in the context of the words functional medicine or functional nutrition. It is certainly in the umbrella of holistic health. Some people call it integrative medicine or integrative health. But for me, it's based on a few very important biological principles or physiological principles. The first principle being that the body is constantly trying to heal itself. And by healing itself, I mean functioning normally. When the body is functioning normally, there are no negative symptoms and there are no negative conditions. And it's important to remind ourselves that the body's hardwired. It's in our genetic makeup. Every cell of our body is programmed to function normally. The problem is very few of us were taught how to cooperate with those self-healing capabilities. So the first principle is the body is always working 24/7 to function normally, to heal itself. The second principle is when it comes to the choices that we make every day about everything, but specifically about what we eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, take for medicine, take for supplements, what we how we hydrate ourselves. None of these decisions has a neutral impact on the body. So the second principle is nothing is neutral. Everything has an impact on our physiology. Everything has an impact on the body's desire to restore normal functioning. And so every choice is either complementary to what our body's trying to do, which is function normally, or it's actively insulting. And the impact of one insulting habit, depending on what it is and how big it is, could literally block the body's ability to heal itself and function normally. So these things are very, very important. And so over the years, we've identified 7 distinct and yet interconnected root cause areas where we will find these complementary or insulting habits. The first area is mindfulness, and that means everything that you already think about when you hear that term, mindfulness. For me, mindfulness is the ability to know the difference between the complementary and insulting habits and consciously choose to practice the complementary habits. Root cause area number 2 is proper daily hydration. Every cell of our body needs oxygen. Every cell of our body needs water. Every cell of our body needs micronutrients. So if there's drought at any level, if our body needs 80 ounces of water a day, but we're only giving it 30 ounces of water a day, or even 40 ounces of water a day, everything is functioning less than it should be. Everything is functioning less well than it could be. And so this is a major piece of the puzzle. And fortunately, it's easy and it's not expensive. Root cause area number 3 is micronutrient deficiencies. So there's two types of nutrients: micronutrients, the microscopic vitamins and minerals that we cannot see, and the macronutrients are the actual literal foods on our plate. The grains, beans, vegetables, chicken, fish, eggs, cheese, fermented vegetables, this vast, wonderful cornucopia of food that we have access to. Root cause area number 4 is the microbiome, the intestinal microbiome. Sometimes we call it intestinal dysbiosis. The microbiome is this amazing ecosystem of organisms that live in our digestive system. But we also have a microbiome on our skin. We have a microbiome in our lungs. We have a microbiome in our sinuses. But the microbiome of the intestines, the gut microbiome, has the biggest impact on all those other microbiomes. There are literally thousands of trillions of organisms that live in that ecosystem inside the body, and 80% of them are supposed to be health promoting probiotic organisms. But there are many influences in our world, in our diet, in our lifestyle that can upset the balance of this microbiome. And so what happens as we move from the ideal 80% or more healthy organisms to 70% or 60% or 50%, that's called intestinal dysbiosis. And it's basically the weeds taking over the garden within. And I'll say more about that. Root cause area number, where are we? 6 is oxidative stress, mindfulness, hydration, micronutrients, macronutrients. The 5th area is the microbiome. And then the 6th area is oxidative stress. Everything that we do with our body, everything that we put into our body can be explained to be inflammatory in its effect or anti-inflammatory in its effect. So oxidative stress is the medical term for inflammation. And I once heard a medical doctor at a seminar say 90% of all adult negative conditions are chronic and degenerative in nature. In other words, they're not caused by an infection. They're chronic conditions, degenerative conditions. The organs and systems and cells are not working the way they're supposed to. And then he said 100% of all the chronic conditions are caused by oxidative stress. And then the 7th root cause area is redox signaling. And one of the simplest ways of understanding redox signaling is the word redox comes from 2 other types of molecules. One are oxidants, and the other is reductants. For many, many years, science thought that all oxidants were bad, and that's why we developed antioxidant therapy. But today, and over the last 25 years, we've learned that some oxidants are complementary. And so this balance between these 2 types of molecules, reductants and oxidants, and that's where we get this word redox, is very important. In fact, if our cells can't signal through these redox signaling molecules, Little else matters. And so, fortunately, there's a way to replenish our redox signaling molecules, and also by making conscious complementary choices in those first six root cause areas. This is another way to make sure that our cells are producing an abundant supply of these redox signaling molecules. Every healthy cell of our body produces these molecules. Okay, so by making changes in each of these seven root cause areas, by literally transforming the insulting habits into complementary habits, the body heals itself. And so today we're going to look a little more closely at the microbiome and specifically at this study that recently came out, which identified a particular group of probiotics and some of the amazing things they discovered as a result of that. So I'm going to minimize my screen. Hopefully you won't see this and bring up this study. I just want to read the summary, a couple of sentences from the summary of this study. So, Brian, you can just see me, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, this is again a couple of sentences about the summary of this amazing study. An understudied group of bacteria in our gut microbiome appears to play a central role in keeping us healthy, according to researchers at the University of Cambridge in England. In a huge global study led by University of Cambridge researchers, a single group of bacteria, which they named CAG170. Now, don't ask me what that means because I spent an hour today combing the internet trying to figure out why did they call it CAG 170, and I don't know, but they gave it that name, and so that's the group of organisms that this study looked at. CAG is a group of gut bacteria known only from their genetic fingerprints. Scientists have never been able to grow most of them in the lab. In other words, so all of the probiotics that we take supplementally are probiotics that can be cultured in a lab, can be grown in a lab, harvested, and then put into capsules. This group of probiotics that they're calling CAG 170 have not been able to be cultured. Scientists cannot reproduce them yet. But in studying the gut bacteria from over 11,000 people in 39 different countries, they found that the level of this particular group of probiotics was consistently higher in healthy people than those people with chronic diseases, including inflammatory bowel diseases, obesity, chronic fatigue syndrome, and about 10 other conditions. I pulled them out of the study, so I'll just mention them here. They identified 13 degenerative disease states where this group of probiotic organisms was in a very, very low population. And so part of the conclusion is one of the reasons that these people developed these chronic conditions was the low population of the probiotics. So the conditions are obesity, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, colorectal cancer, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, osteopenia and osteoporosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and a spinal condition called ankylosing spondylitis. So let's see. Further analysis of this cohort of organisms, CAG 170, revealed that they have the capacity These organisms have the capacity to produce high levels of vitamin B12 and other B vitamins. Now, I've taught that for many, many years, so it's fascinating to see that revealed in this study. So this group of probiotics called CAG170 produce high levels of B vitamins and produce a high level of enzymes, digestive enzymes, endogenous enzymes that are made inside the body that break down a wide variety of foods, including complex carbohydrates, sugars, like the sugar found in milk, and other sugars, the sugars in all foods, and fibers that are difficult to be broken down. You hear about people all the time who cannot consume certain fibers appearing in grains. Well, this study is showing that this group of probiotics produce enough enzymes to break down those fibers, as well as proteins and fats. The researchers think it's likely that the vitamin B12 and other B vitamins actually supports the growth of these gut bacteria rather than supporting the humans where whose guts it's being produced in. That's an interesting sentence. So they're saying, I've always read in previous studies that the B vitamins that the probiotics are producing are for our immune system and other purposes. This study is saying, no, no, no. The gut bacteria are producing all the B vitamins to support the other probiotics in the gut. So, again, very interesting. The findings mean that the CAG 170 could, in the future, be used as an indicator of our gut microbiome health. They also open the door to developing new probiotics specifically designed to support and maintain healthy levels of this CAG 170. Just two more sentences here. Dr. Alexander Almeida, who was the uh, head researcher of this particular study, said, our work has revealed that CAG 170 bacteria, part of the hidden microbiome, appear to be key players in human health, likely by helping us to digest the main components of our food and keeping the entire microbiome running smoothly. So, in other words, this group of probiotics helps to keep the entire garden healthy. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So in conclusion, they said we looked at the we looked at the gut microbes of thousands of people, over 11,000 people across 39 countries. We consistently found that people with these diseases had lower levels of this particular group of bacteria in their gut. Okay. So let me take it out of, let me just get back to the main camera here. Okay. So again, it was a long study, written study. It was like 25 pages going into the weeds of all the different species of bacteria that are in this group that they're calling CAG 170. I'm not going to get into those kind of details. The most important takeaway from this study is when they examined the microbiome of healthy people, this particular group of organisms was in very high supply. They found a lot of it. And in the 13 specific diseases that they examined, this group of organisms was in very low supply, a low amount. Okay, so what this says to me is that it simply affirms everything that I've known about the importance of the microbiome, and it affirms everything I've learned and taught about how to create a healthy microbiome and then how to maintain a healthy microbiome. And so I will stop there, and I'm sure there'll be some interesting questions.
Awesome. Um, so I was actually, there were a bunch of questions that came in, but I just asked the internet about that particular phrase, and it looks like it's simply in the biological framework, it just means like a strain, and then 170 is like the identification of that particular thing. So I think it's like a scientific way of saying what something is. You were very, very close. Um, okay, let me get to all these questions. Okay. The first one here is, and you kind of alluded to this, but I'll just ask it again. You know, you've been doing this a long, long time. What was your first thought when you read this study?
Great question. My first thought or my first realization was that this study affirms everything that I've learned previously. There wasn't anything new in the study other than the discovery of this particular group that they had never discovered before, that they're calling CAG 170. I did not know of the existence of this CAG 170. The study also said that they discovered over 4,000 new species of probiotics living in a healthy microbiome. So again, my realization was this information is more important than ever. I'm glad I've been a pioneer in this area. I'm glad to continue to work and teach in this area. And I also feel a responsibility and obligation to make it easy to understand so that in our day-to-day life, we can be confident that we're supporting this incredible microbiome, whether we ever learn the names of the individual organisms or not. That's less important than having the confidence every day of knowing what feeds the healthy organisms, literally what fertilizes the garden within, as opposed to the things that destroy those microorganisms. And the things that destroy the microorganisms are the things that most people are already familiar with: antibiotics, most medication, highly processed food, alcohol and sugar, and highly processed foods and junk food, and all those things that you already know about, but they really are extremely detrimental to the health of this amazing microbiome. I guess the other thing I would say is that, they isolated the benefits of the microbiome to two things in this study. One is that this group was producing B vitamins and producing enzymes, but they already know that these organisms produce all kinds of other things like hormones. So hormone regulation, even the hormones that regulate our cholesterol, are generated by the probiotic organisms in our gut. So ultimately, they're going to find, and most of the scientists that I read have already come to this conclusion, that the health of the microbiome is the most important thing that we do for ourselves, okay? Because it impacts every organ, system, and cell in the body. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, and actually, this next one was part of your answer. They were asking particularly about antibiotics and wondering, could there be something specific in a lot of the kind of generic antibiotics that kind of target killing off those particular species that you're talking about? And then, of course, so one, do you think that's the case? that they are targeting that specific species? And then what would be the fastest way to get them back?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is I'm going to assume, I didn't read this in the study, but I'm going to assume that this group, this CAG 170, is extremely resilient and would probably be among the last type of organisms to be adversely affected by all those, insults that we mentioned. That's my assumption. Um, what we can do, to prevent that is, all the complementary things that we hear about all the time. Getting enough sleep and rest, staying hydrated, eating a wide variety of organic foods, organic whole foods, learning how to cook properly, taking in prebiotics, taking in fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi. Um, so all those things, and of course, taking supplementally a really good probiotic, taking supplementally digestive enzymes, um, all of taking a really good superfood, so that we're getting all of the micronutrients that we need. All those, the micronutrients in particular, feed or become food for the probiotic organisms. So what you want to do is feed the probiotics and starve the dysbiotics. The dysbiotics are the opposite of the probiotics. The dysbiotic organisms are the negative organisms. They produce toxins that cause the gas and the bloating and cramping and constipation and all the negative symptoms that we experience in our digestive system. So when you stop drinking sugary sodas, when you stop eating, uh, sugary foods, when you stop eating junk food and processed food, because those are the favorite foods of the negative organisms. That's one way to begin the process of transforming the microbiome, and then all the other things that we talked about. Go
Um,
ahead.
and thank you everyone for the private messages with questions. I'm actually going to jump ahead to one of the questions in the group because it kind of piggybacks on what you were talking about. So I'm just going to read the question. A lot of times as people age, there is the thought that people have too much acid, so they are given proton pump inhibitors, when in fact people do not have enough acid. So everything just sits and ferments. Also, have you ever heard of the prebiotic called L-reuteri?
Yes, yes. L-reuteri is a common probiotic. All probiotics function as prebiotics. Prebiotics are simply substances that feed the probiotics. So all healthy food are prebiotics as well. What was the first part of the question? Oh, acid. So yes, often, like so many times, the diagnosis of acid reflux, the medical doctors assume that the reason you're having reflux is your stomach is producing too much hydrochloric acid. And so they've created this whole category of medications called proton pump inhibitors, which literally shuts off the production of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. But that's really stupid, because hydrochloric acid has two very important functions, at least two. And one of them is to kill bacteria, pathological bacteria that we might breathe in or take in through our food. And the other important function of the hydrochloric acid is to break down protein, digest protein. So when you shut off the production of hydrochloric acid, one of the most common side effects of a proton pump inhibitor is constipation, because you're not breaking down your protein. So I have found over the years that one of the top causes of acid reflux is not chewing your food properly. Because the more you chew, the more enzymes are produced, and the more alkaline the stomach becomes. So if you don't chew your food, it causes the stomach to produce extra hydrochloric acid to try to compensate for what you didn't do. Chewing is literally the most important of all the complementary habits, and we have 100% control over it. Most people don't chew properly. Most people do not chew thoroughly. Most people do not chew consciously. The other major cause of acid reflux is that the stomach acid is actually too weak. And it's too weak because the person is not properly hydrated. So the body's not produce. Well, it's two things. The hydrochloric acid can be weak, and the hydrochloric acid could be too concentrated because they're not properly hydrated. So all these things kind of play together. And again, when you're properly hydrated, it's an amazing biomodulator, not just of aspects of digestive system function, but functions everywhere else in the body as well.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Clearly this is from someone who has, heard you speak before. They asked about you've spoken about the connection between the gut microbiome and the brain. And so they asked, this particular group of bacteria, what's your sense of how important they are to brain health?
Yeah, so my assumption is this is the first time I've read about this particular group of probiotics, the CAG 170. So I'm going to assume that it's going to become very popular, that we're going to be hearing more and more about this particular group, and they will begin to discover all kinds of benefits from this group of organisms. And I'm sure enhancing the gut to brain connection will be one of them.
Awesome. And then back into the group chat here. What is known so far about how to support the growth of the CAG 170 probiotics?
Yeah, so the article, the study itself did not even go into a conversation or discussion about diet and things that we can do on our own to improve the microbiome. It simply was going into great detail about different components, the names of different organisms in this group. So again, my assumption, and I'm sure it will turn out to be true down the road, is that all the things that we currently know about supporting the intestinal microbiome will support this group, the CAG 170. So I'm going to assume that that's true. Uh, so it's always been true. In the very beginning of my career, I knew very little about. I didn't even have this word microbiome. Uh, the system that I was taught, macrobiotics, put a very strong emphasis on gut health. We probably didn't even use that term. The focus was on making sure you had very healthy bowel movements every day. And so eating certain foods, eating fermented foods, this was all part of the macrobiotic approach to diet, macrobiotic approach to health. And then gradually over time, as I expanded my educational resources, starting to learn the particulars of the organisms involved and how to support them and what to avoid so you're not inadvertently destroying them or or blocking them from thriving. So all these things are absolutely essential. And yeah, we're going to hear a lot more about this particular group. But the most important message in tonight's conversation is everything that you already know about supporting your healthy microbiome. Keep doing those things. There isn't anything new that's been discovered uh, in that area of how we support a healthy microbiome. One of the things they talked about in the study was, of course, they're going to attempt to isolate certain strains in that group, CAG 170, and then try to culture them in the lab, and then try to make new types of probiotics that will support the health and growth of that group, that CAG 170 group. But again, in the meantime, all the things that we already know, those are the things that we should be doing.
Awesome. This next question was sent privately, but I'll just say it's definitely, I feel like it's someone who's been a client of yours in the past, and I actually think it's a very cool question because kind of piggybacking on what you were just saying, where even with this new discovery, it sounds like it's not necessarily going to change how you're working with your clients right now. But
Correct.
based on what you're seeing with this, the question was specifically like, do you think there could be something that over the next 5 to 10 years might actually change how you work with people? Like it's something new and that you couldn't even imagine right now. Do you think that's possible, or are you going to keep reinforcing what you've been doing for 40 years?
Anything is possible. I think probably the biggest development that will come out of this study will be the creation of the development of uh, more powerful probiotics. Uh, right now, if you can find a probiotic, we call them broad spectrum probiotics. If you can find a probiotic with 12 or 16 different strains of organisms, that's really good. And yet the new science is telling us there are thousands of species of probiotics. So, of course, we can imagine then, not too far down the road, we're going to find probiotic supplements that have 50 species in them. And those species will have been determined through other studies to help with bone health, to help with blood health, to help with the nervous system, to help anxiety, to help, there'll be targeted probiotics. Personally, my position is you want to do everything that you can to support the diversity of organisms in the gut. That diversity is going to create more diversity of these organisms, and that diversity will result in all the necessary things to keep your gut healthy and to keep the rest of your body healthy. The only difference in the future will be they'll know specifically what those organisms are versus what I just said, which is a general explanation, but it's accurate. I mean, all the books written about probiotics in the last 20 years have simply said you want diversity of organisms in your garden, in your microbiome.
Awesome. And another question here in the group.
Sorry,
Um,
Brian, sorry. The other thing that came into my mind was that we may, in the course of, the development of studies of microbiome, studies of probiotics, we hopefully will get greater and greater recipes for naturally fermented foods that we can do at home. I think it will become absolute mainstream. Everyone will be making homemade pickles. Everyone will be making fermented foods because all the commercial quality pickles have been pasteurized. So we don't get any probiotic benefit from those type of pickles, but we do get benefit from sauerkraut and kimchi. And of course, it is very easy to make fermented vegetables in your own kitchen. So I think that will become mainstream, not too far down the road.
I think that's a great call. Um, Another great question in the group here, just in your preliminary research so far, is there testing available for this particular bacteria, the CAG170, or do you think they're close, or any news on that?
The answer is no. There was no mention of that in the study. They have not developed a test yet. I mean, to determine the presence of this group or how prolific it is, et cetera. But that would be obviously something down the road that I'm sure they're working on already. And again, what they did mention in the study was this will become an indicator organism so that one of the simplest ways to determine the diversity of the microbiome is through a stool analysis. I found it interesting in the study. At no point in the study did they mention analyzing the stool, analyzing the bowel movement. It looked like and it read like the organisms were taken from the microbiome itself. You know, similar in the way that you would do a biopsy. But how they actually did that, I'm not sure.
Okay, and I'll do one more private question here. And it was specifically based on all of your research so far with this, you know, you always have takeaways during all of these, you know, presentations that we have in the Gut Masterclass. Is there something specific that you would say today that might be different than you've said before based on the research you did with this?
Not yet. Like I said, my biggest takeaway right now is that everything I read is a confirmation of everything I'm already doing, everything I'm already teaching. I come away from this conversation tonight. I come away from reading the study over several times over the last few days and weeks. That again, that the health of our gut microbiome is far more significant than even I think it is, and I think it's the most significant thing. So yeah, it's how do you describe that? How do you take something in the category of most important, most significant, and then realize, well, yeah, and it's even more significant.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Russell, and thank you, everyone. As always, questions that come in are new and engaging, and we all get to learn something new, which is what makes this really, really special. Um, I'm gonna pass it back to Russell for some closing thoughts, but just really quickly, I'm gonna put a couple links in the chat. One of them is gonna be for Russell's book. It's a free ebook, which you can click on the link and you can download. Um, it is, we've heard over, many, many years, it's one of those books that you can literally take with you everywhere, especially because it's an ebook form. And it's just one of those ways that you can constantly be learning beyond just, sessions and opportunities like this with Russell. And the other link is going to be for an opportunity to speak directly with Russell. It's completely free. They book in 30-minute segments. If you've learned something tonight that you want to dive into further, or maybe you have, some personal questions you want to run by Russell, take advantage of that. And then the third link is going to be to review us. Um, we want to constantly be improving, and so honest reviews help us do a better job at what we're doing. So, thank you all for being here. I will pass it back to Russell for some closing thoughts, and I'll wrap it up when he's done. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So I think I think it's important to say, because this is really the heart and soul of the work that I do. Um, Many people have changed their diet. Many people are very diligent in their self-care. Many people are already taking probiotics. Many people are eating fermented foods. Many people have gone to great lengths to improve the condition of their gut microbiome. And yet, after all that effort, they're not where they want to be. Um, and so that's very frustrating. And so, if that is you, or if you know somebody in that position, please take advantage of that free 30-minute session and do have a conversation with me about that. Because there is, one of the things that I do, the most important thing that I do in my work is to transform the microbiome, to physically get rid of the dysbiotic organisms, to reduce the population of the dysbiotic organisms, not only or not merely by changing your diet and taking probiotic supplements, but literally using a group of very specialized herbal products that I've been using for 30 years now. They're safe, they're very effective, and it's literally the best way I know alongside of everything else that we've already talked about. But sometimes there are some situations that people, in spite of all their best efforts, are just not they're not getting to where they need to get to in their gut health. And so what I found is that by going through this protocol, this herbal protocol, with me supervising the effort, there's a much greater chance of reestablishing a healthy microbiome and finally getting over that hump and having a restoration of normal functioning throughout the entire GI system. So again, many people are able to get results by making all the type of changes that we've talked about earlier. But if you've done all that and it still has not worked, if you're still not where you want to be, then please consider uh, this other option, at least talking about it with me and seeing if that's something that you can actually do. Other than that, Brian, I think I said everything that I wanted to say about this particular study and the microbiome in particular. So I will hand it back to you to say goodnight to everybody. And thank you again, everyone, for being here live. It's great to see your faces, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Russell. I can say genuinely that I have been Russell's son for 37 years. I've had many breakfasts, lunch, and dinners and holidays, and I always learn something new. And truly, it's because of all of you showing up with who you are uniquely, and you have particular questions, and it's what makes these opportunities very, very special for all of us. So thank you for being here and creating that with us. I've also had this really distinct honor over many, many years to meet people that have worked with my dad. And I have this really cool story that I heard recently, which I thought might be pertinent tonight. And it's this client of my dad shared that working with my dad was like finding a personal trainer that was 1000% completely dedicated to getting them in the best shape of their life. And the only thing that they had to do every day was work with that person in their very, very unique way with their unique body and diet and lifestyle and everything was engineered to get them into the best shape possible. And they said, that's what Russell did with my health. He did everything so personally and so uniquely to me, in this case, my dad's client. And so, my invitation to anyone here tonight and to anyone listening on the recording, or to someone that you might just love in your life, my dad's work, I think, is most special because it is particularly unique and dedicated to every single person and who they are in the most unique way. And I just thought that was a very cool thing for me to hear. And I wanted to share that with you all. So once again, thank you all for joining us in this Gut Rolls Masterclass. We can't wait to do the next one, and we will see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody.